So first, let me thank Helmut and Christoph for making it possible for me to be here. It really is a great honor to be here. Also, thanks to Ariel and Rob, Kim, Cynthia, Ash, and Sonia for helping set up today. You guys are really great. I think all of us who are fellows or visiting scholars just feel like this great sense of being welcomed and accepted, and it's just really smooth. I wish we could bring everybody back to the U.S. with us and run things at home for me. No offense to my wife Ingrid, who of course does a great job of that. Sorry, Ingrid. Anyway, so today I'm going to trace the arc of my project with a specific focus on mineral water, and thanks for participating in the test today. Let me say a little bit about my approach. You know, I'm not an environmental historian, and so when I first came in January, I was quite intimidated by all the historians, you know, with their data sets and their, you know, researching documents from, you know, the 2nd century BC and so forth. So let me just say a little bit. In general, though, as an English person, I really want my work to appeal to both non-specialists and to academic audiences. And especially at a state-funded institution, I really feel a responsibility to try and communicate my ideas to the public as well as to other academics. So that's kind of, you know, where I'm coming from. As American philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson said in 1837, the American Scholar, he said, "The office of the scholar is to cheer, to raise, and to guide men by showing them facts amidst appearances." Of course, that was in the day before non-gender specific language. And my intention in this project is to celebrate the beverages we consume while also making us more aware of the impacts on the landscapes from which those ingredients are sourced. And I hope that eventually will make readers of this book have a better sense of what is consumed when we sip our drinks. And you know, one of the other approaches I use is what we call, in English anyway, narrative scholarship, which is essentially a combination of first-hand experience and observation coupled with more traditional forms of research. So the title here, you can see. So why write about beverages? It's a $1.4 trillion industry globally, and you know, everybody drinks every day, but I don't think many people think about it. You know, we think about, where did that pork chop come from, maybe, or what about the broccoli? What is consumed when we sip our drinks? As Helmut said, I've been interested in place and landscape almost my entire life, and I don't see that interest waning at any point in time. And not so much has been written about beverages in comparison to food. So the beverages that I've considered in this project are mineral water, Adelholzener here in Bavaria, a special grape that grows on Santorini in the Greek Isles, beer, the hops especially from a brewery here in Bavaria. The owner of the brewery actually goes to school with my daughter back there, who will be greatly embarrassed when I say hi to her. So that's been a good connection for me. And then back in the U.S., Mountain Dew, a sugary caffeine-laden soft drink, coffee in Hawaii, and kava, which is a drink found throughout the South Pacific, but in this case, Fiji. Why these drinks? Case studies tell good stories. They reflect broader trends. And you know, a project requires some level of passion, and it's a happy marriage of focused research and serendipity. So if you ride the S-Bahn, you've probably seen this advertisement before. Okay, so ads, if you're looking for a significant other, as they say, websites like this encourage us to do specific research. You know, you type in red hair, 6'8", mustache, you know, see what comes up. And other times, chance just does the work for you. So here's a Harlequin romance. These people look like they met in front of the Bahnhof, maybe somewhere in Spain, south of France. So some of what I've done, you know, I wasn't planning on writing about mineral water, but when I got here, I saw the Adelholz and I thought, that's a great story. And so I spent a good amount of time talking about that. So these are the three things I've been focusing on here while I've been at the RCC. We were in Greece a few weeks ago. I got to talk to some wine producers and so forth there, and then been working on the beer as well. You have to be careful when you say working on the beer, right? Some of my colleagues worked on the beer a little too hard last night over in the Englisher Garden. I won't mention any names. So when I started this project maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I really thought it should be about landscape transformation due to abusive agricultural practices. I was going to focus on the transformation of wild to domesticated landscapes. And some examples of that, which I'll come to in just a sec, broadly speaking, that was going to be, I guess, maybe a little bit more of a negative story. Look at what we've done. Look how we've contaminated the planet. And then in the meantime, from when I started that project, I started thinking there have to be some positive stories. There are farmers and producers who want to do the right thing. They're trying to do the best thing they can. And I feel like that negative story has been told. So I'm trying to tell a story that's a little bit more positive while also acknowledging some of the problems inherent in the production of beverages. So one of the things I've been looking at was the wine industry. This is out in Napa, California, spraying herbicides, glyphosate, which if any of you read Der Spiegel, this month's edition actually has a story about glyphosate, which they think contributes to birth defects in animals and possibly in people. So Napa Valley producers put down about 170,000 tons of agricultural chemicals, 250 different chemicals each year. In Germany, worldwide, about 740,000 tons of glyphosate is used worldwide every year. So that was one thing. Another thing, when I was looking at the soft drinks Mountain Dew, was looking at corn and how the corn monoculture in the American Midwest displaced forest, native prairie grasses, pollutes the water there. Here's the Corn Belt, if you're not sure where that is. Let me get my little pointer going. There's Iowa, so real in the heartland. Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, Nebraska. So here's a herbicide called atrazine, which is widely used. I gotta look at my notes here and make sure I get this part right for you. So in the U.S., about 70 million pounds of atrazine are spread on crops in the U.S. That's about 32 million kilos. Okay. And again, you can see how that corresponds almost exactly to the Corn Belt. And then here's a study by the U.S. Geological Survey showing the likelihood of herbicides exceeding drinking water standards in the U.S., and that corresponds almost exactly to where the atrazine is applied as well. And this is done a prediction about 20 years worth of data here. Also looking at Napa Valley, how as they cut down the forest up here, they cut down the woods, you're putting more grapes on hillsides, more prone to erosion, silting of rivers, and so forth. So I don't know if I just depressed myself or I just thought, do I really want to talk about this? And so, as I said, I'll have to consider these problems in the book, but the center really focused on how beverages and the crops grown for them preserve cultural landscapes. As Helmut said, how beverages connect people to place, and also how beverages reflect human needs, such as establishing social status, need for belonging, and the desire to connect with nature via landscapes. So here in Bavaria, here's a map from 1613, one of the first maps of Munich, and down here is a hops garden, and I'll zoom in on that a little bit. I've circled it. It's just due west of the Sendlinger Tor, and garden that's actually how it's spelled on the map. It's not my poor American spelling of a German word. And here's the garden right here. You can see it. And so that's a good example of the gardens are gone now, and that disappearance is an indication of increasing urbanization. But elsewhere, crops grown for beverages can help preserve landscapes. For instance, hops in the Hallertal here, one of the biggest hops growing, if not the biggest hops growing region in the entire world. Wine in the island of Santorini. And mineral water is an interesting example because unlike beer or wine, it doesn't require any crops. But it does require watershed protection areas. So in some ways, drinking water, whether it's tap water or mineral water, not always, but at least in the case of Adelholzener, you're contributing to the protection of watershed areas. These are protected regions. The water for Adelholzener comes out of the Bergener Moos. So here's my case study. For those who aren't German speakers, basically this the slogan here says, sometimes the most valuable treasures are right in our backyard. Okay, maybe translated another way, or right in our neighborhood. So Adler-Holzner is really focused on, I think, connecting people with Bavaria. So I went out to the Adler-Holzner bottling facility back in the winter, and I was talking to the woman there at the desk, and she said, "Do you know what? There's a water sommelier course coming out here tomorrow." And I said, "A water sommelier course, really?" And anyway, she gave me the website, and so I went out there. They're out in Greifelfing, if you know where that is, out on the S-Bahn, headed south of the city. $2,000 for 2 weeks. I wasn't about to pay that, but I went there and I interviewed some people and talked to the guy who ran the course. It's pretty interesting. So one conclusion I had is you're getting this sort of new class of priests who are translating for us these 20th century icons, brands of mineral water and the labels that really are the thing that behind the mineral water. So one of our new types of faith that we have in an increasingly secular society is faith in packaging. So, you know, why do people drink mineral water? Germany, tap water is perfectly good. Okay, comes almost from about 50 kilometers away from where Munich sources its drinking water. So it's not like, you know, you're in a place where the water's polluted and contaminated. Germany has excellent water. Okay, so beer and wine have a psychotropic, that is, mood-altering effect. As do coffee, tea, and kava. But mineral water doesn't provide any external mood-altering effects, other than, as John pointed out, you know, maybe we're all addicted to water because we couldn't survive without drinking it. So, but aside from, you know, it's not in the same sense, I guess. But anyway, that was a great point. Marketing studies say that taste, carbonation, quality, and health concerns are what drive people to purchase mineral water. But marketing studies don't ask existential questions about identity or place. I mean, the average consumer, they're going to be like, what are you talking about? So before I go too much further, if you still have your sheet of paper when you did the water test, I want you just to jot down, because I'm just going to keep this presentation to 25 minutes so I can't chew up too much time. Just jot down really quickly, when you think of mineral water, what thoughts come to mind? And if you think of Adler-Holzner, which many of you drank over there or here today, what associations do you make, either about the name or the image? And there were 3 of you who did the test but left your papers up here, so you can come on up and get them if you want. So just give you a minute to do that. Okay, I think that's about a minute. Also, I should say, you know, one of the wonderful things about being here is that every single person who's a fellow, not just in here today, but who's been here since I've been here, has helped me in some way with the project. It's a really wonderful thing, and if we could import that model back to our own institutions, it would really be fantastic. Okay, so Adler-Holzner. So it's the leading mineral water brand in Bavaria. It's really, I think, a good company. Positive example of a mineral water bottler. They produce about 439 million bottles a year. So that's a lot of bottles. 80% of those are recyclable, either the glass or the PET recyclable, the Mehrwegflaschen. Owned by the Barmherzige Schwestern. In English, that's the Sisters of Mercy. And all the money that they earn goes into their hospitals, their old age homes that they run for people and so forth. So it's a good, you know, the money is put to social uses as well as helping to preserve the area where they source their water. It's got a really fascinating history that I think helps explain the present. So the springs were discovered by the Roman legionnaire Primus and his brother. They began healing people with prayer and with mineral water. So that prayer thing is important to remember, the belief. And then they went back to Rome for some reason. They were Christians, and of course what happened, they were beheaded. One legend has it that Primus drank hot lead down, and as he did that, it transformed to water, and he frightened off all the lions and bears that were there waiting to kill him, and he nevertheless, either way, became a saint. So that was the 2 legends about Primus. And so eventually, though, in the Middle Ages, in the late Middle Ages, the baths evolved into something between libertine behavior and debauchery, and this is where, Natalia, you need to cover your eyes. That's my daughter. I'm just kidding. So you can see here towards the back, here's the king, or perhaps the Prince of Bavaria, and I'll explain that in a second, peering in through this window. Whether he's peering in out of with disgust or wishing he could be participating in the festivities is unclear. I'm hoping that Simone can translate the Latin for me, but we didn't quite have a chance to do that. So the prince said, you got to stop this, an end of this kind of behavior. I don't want to see that sort of thing. He was apparently a very conservative guy. And by the 1700s, the Adelholzener Springs, there was a whole baths complex, kind of like a therme today, a spa. Had begun to host the Kaiser Joseph I's daughter, Marie Amelie, the Princess of Bavaria, who would later go on to be the Kaiserin herself, the Empress. So this became an A-list destination, right? Just like when some celebrity goes to an island or a resort, next thing you know, everybody wants to go there. So this was the greatest marketing thing that ever could have happened to Adelholzen in the 1700s. Eventually then, water, they went back to marketing it as having healing properties. Everything you can imagine. The water was supposed to heal. Kidney problems, circulation, you name it, the water allegedly healed that. But of course, there was no evidence. The science at the time wasn't sophisticated enough to be able to do some sort of longitudinal study in any case. So, mineral water. People purchase a host of ideas when they buy mineral water. Many of these are impossible to embrace in the material world. And I think these ideas can exist only in the imagination. One of those might be a connection to a desirable natural landscape, for one. And by the way, what was going on at the Adelholzen baths, that was common throughout Germany. That wasn't something that was unique to this particular place. So this is in Greece. Beverages in some ways are like infinity pools. You're all familiar with an infinity pool? Okay, in the old days, the pool would have an edge here, some kind of concrete lip. I don't know why they would be there, to prevent people from tripping or to divide the pool from the pool area. But someone came up with the ideas, if you didn't have that lip, a person could sit in that water and imagine that they're part of this bigger body of water. Okay? So just about any hotel today will have an infinity pool, or the better hotels anyway. So what do infinity pools and beverages have in common is probably the question you were wondering. So I think the pools blur the boundary between culture and nature. You know, you're sitting in this pool, and outside is, whether it's the Mediterranean Sea or a lake somewhere in Bavaria or anywhere, these pools provide the illusion of an authentic connection, however you want to use that word or think of it, with the pure, wild other. So that idea of an illusion, I think, is increasingly something that contemporary society is willing to substitute for the actual physical experiences of getting in the sea itself. A lot of people, when they go on holiday, maybe you know people like this, they go to the sea, but they never go in the ocean because they don't like to get all sticky from the salt water. There's seaweed. The pool's nice and safe. You know, they can have their drink there. So here's a popular mineral water brand from 1915. Brühwasser, der Geschmack des Geldes, in other words, for non-German speakers, the taste of money. Now, why don't we see more mineral water labels like this? Part of the reason is because I had a little fun with PowerPoint, and this was a postcard from Krupp, you know, the industrial conglomerate, and I typed that in there, okay? But the point is that when we're interested in labels for mineral water, even though the industry is the thing that makes it possible for us to buy the water, it's created the wealth in a society that makes it possible, we have excess money to actually pay for mineral water, and Adelholzener is reasonable, but as those who were at the Works in Progress a few weeks ago know, there are plenty of bottles that cost up to $40 US per bottle. And I was looking on the internet the other day, there's some that cost $400 a bottle. Imagine that, just for a bottle of water. So we have this odd relationship between industry and nature. We have a desire for purity and transcending the local. So North Americans are going to be familiar with Fiji water. I don't know if I've seen it too much in Germany. Do they sell Fiji water here?
Yeah. It's not purified, but not mineral.
It's supposed to just come from a spring water. There used to be a distinction between spring and mineral water, but that law was abolished in 1980, in which to be considered mineral water, you had to have a certain percent of mineral content per liter of water. Each country has its own laws about what can be called spring water, mineral water, or just flat-out bottled water. This one here is from Iceland, glacial water. This was served at the 87th Annual Academy Awards in Hollywood last year. So people are drinking this, and I don't know what to make of this one here. This next one here is called, my Greenlandish isn't very good, Ilioquac, something like that, which is bottled from melting glaciers in Greenland. So, you know, I guess, what do they say? When life gives you lemons, make lemonade, as the old saw goes. So your glaciers are melting, let's bottle it and sell it. It's an interesting piece there. So, all right, so bottled water isn't all good. So plastic bottles have contamination from BPA, an endocrine disruptor. It's probably I believe that's the most common plastic and most common chemical in the world, BPA, produced in terms of volume. A 2015 German, and I have that just by chance, I was in a paper store the other day, Stiftung Warentest, Mineralwasser, interesting study. In a 2012 Austrian study, several water brands here in Germany, not ones from some other country, are contaminated with pesticide residues, fungicide residues, and a corrosion inhibitor. A 2008 German study, 12 out of 20 brands of mineral water contained endocrine disruptors. 2008 Volvic water recall, they found xylene, which if you ever smelled a paint, really powerful smell. I mean, some paints have this, and naphthalene, which are mothballs. So they had to do a worldwide recall of about 570,000 bottles of this water. So bottled water isn't necessarily any more free of contaminants than tap water. But yet people, remember our imagination, our illusion, people continue to believe that. And when I went out to Adelholzen, I was fascinated by the bottling plant. Highly automated, precision, technological sophistication. And I had this odd moment. I'm down looking at the plant, all the lights and these things spinning around and bottles going everywhere. And I'm like, but that water's natural, isn't it? Like somehow the way the bottle is marketed is like you're just sipping this spring water, but there's this extremely complicated industrial process that brings the water to your table. And Adelholzener isn't unique in that way. Any bottler's that way. So as I said, you still have this perception of mineral water as healthier and more natural than tap water. And there's a guy at Harvard who's his specialty is studying placebos. And he's put out a couple studies recently. Number one, that placebos work. And even more fascinating is that even those who knew they were given a placebo reported an improvement in their symptoms. So what's the connection between placebos and mineral water? Part of it is just we get that idea, marketers connect with us that we're drinking something pure, and so when we have that bottle of mineral water, we somehow feel like we're a part of nature, even if you're sitting in some place you'd rather not be sitting. So Val was down in Italy earlier this spring, and she saw this billboard and took a picture of it for me. So I won't embarrass myself by trying to read the Italian, but basically it literally says, "Experience the excitement of a climb without leaving the city." So Adelholzen isn't quite as blunt as that, but they're operating on the same principle. So when we come all the way back here to Adelholzen, I think what the mineral water here is doing, it's developing a connection, a longing maybe even for regional and perhaps even national identity. Simone and I had a good talk about this last week. A connection to Bavaria. What does it mean to be Bavarian? The notion of Heimat, which doesn't translate very well into English, but sort of this idea of a deep connection to place and belonging, and then that it is a part of you. Order, Germany is a very orderly society. I like that. Also, the perception of quality and also of purity that comes from, in large part, from the iconography here on the bottle of the mountains, both on the label and the way the plastic itself is built. And then some other ideas that I'd explored will explore or have explored in the chapter are just the etymology of the word itself, I suppose. You've got the Alps, and I think that's sort of a unique piece of Bavaria, something that the rest of Germany doesn't have. The word Adel in German means nobility, and I think Munich is a city of great wealth and nobility, old money, old families, and regardless of how people feel about that, I think my theory is that, what I argue for anyway, is that people like to be a part of that. We like to be in those open spaces that are elegant, gardens, and so forth. Okay. And then Holz, Simone and I had a little debate about that, but Holz, the idea of the forest, the German word for forest, H-O-L-Z, to what extent do people perceive also that the forest historically as an icon of German identity and perhaps nationalism? Is that also something that subconsciously they feel when they purchase this particular brand of mineral water? So here you are on a hot day, riding the tram or a bus, and maybe sharing a space with someone you would rather not be sharing it with, and you just look and you see, you go by a shop window and you look out and you see that Adelholzener advertisement, and all of a sudden maybe with a bottle of water, you've been able to imaginatively escape to the mountains and perhaps distinguish yourself from that person sitting next to you, those people around you, but at the same time feel connected to them because you and they are a part of the same place. So, and that brings us back to our question. When you think of mineral water, what thoughts come to mind? And when you think of Adelholzener, what associations do you make either about the name or the image? I've told you what I think, but I'm more interested, of course, in hearing what you think. We'll reveal the results of the taste test in a minute. Well, that's really interesting. And I wonder if in the future, if we were trained to know what to look for, we would be able to distinguish between the tap, the filter tap, and the mineral water. Okay, so Helmut.
Well, I think we should have a big applause for